Greetings, everyone, and happy early Tuesday. I wanted to go over the announcements and reminders for this week, as well as summarize some of the feedback from your virtual discussions. So this Saturday, we are having our synchronous meeting. There are two sessions. There's a morning session at 10:30 a.m. and then there's an afternoon session at 3:30 p.m. And so the links are provided in the week 4 folder. Okay. And so you're required to participate in one of the sessions, not both. Okay. So again, you have the option of participating in the morning or the afternoon session, and the links are provided in the week 4 folder. Total possible points for this is 75 points as specified in the syllabus. And so we're going to be using Zoom for the entire 90 minutes. And so I know that you all have had to experience breaking up your meeting time in 30-minute sections. But with the Zoom that I'm using, or the type of Zoom that I'm using, we're able to meet for the entire 90 minutes. So I look forward to seeing you all on Saturday. There is a structure for the meeting. So it is portioned into three sections. So the first portion will be discussion of the course readings. The second portion will be a discussion of your individual research, just more generally speaking, general questions. Notice that you all have had some questions each week that you are meeting in your virtual groups. And then also the third portion will be questions about course assignments, okay? So any questions about any aspects of the course assignments and how that ties back to your own research in supporting the advancement of your own study, okay? So in preparation for the session, I would like for you all to create a PowerPoint, each person to individually create a PowerPoint. So, and within that PowerPoint, have 1 or 2 slides dedicated to each portion of the meeting structure. So that means you would have a slide or two that would address the course readings. You would have a slide or two that would address any aspect of your individual research, okay? And then you have a third slide that would address any aspect of any of the upcoming assignments, okay? And so you never know, I may ask you to present your PowerPoint, so please be sure to have that ready and available, okay? So this week, because we're meeting synchronously, then there will not be a virtual meeting this week. So because the one that we're having on Saturday will replace this meeting, the course readings for the week are not taken from your main text, but rather can be found in the week 4 folder. Okay. There are 2 videos that are focused on philosophical and theoretical frames. So there's one that's focused specifically on theoretical and conceptual frameworks, which you all will use for your dissertations to help ground your research, okay? And then also aspects of philosophy, so ontology, epistemology. So those are some aspects of philosophy, and so and how that applies to methodology and research methods. So please be sure to watch both of those videos as well, because I would like for you all to address that in your PowerPoints as a part of the discussion over the course readings and the videos. I have placed another announcement about the Southwest Educational Research Association Conference. I've had some students to reach out to me about wanting to submit proposals and present at the conference. This is a great way of doing a works in progress and getting feedback about your study. Useful feedback. It's a graduate student friendly conference. And so it's due the 23rd. So there are some exemplars in the doctoral pathway resource folder. And so you can use that to help guide you in the development of your proposal. And then send that to me and I'll work with you on getting that shored up and ready to go. And so this week there are no virtual office hours because I will be talking with you on Saturday. So I was available this past Thursday for office hours. Just be sure to, call in. There's my Skype information, and Google Hangout information is provided in the announcement, okay, as well as in the syllabus. So now I want to talk a little bit about the overall discussions from last week. Everyone did a really great job in talking about aspects of the research. And so this week's reading was a little light in the class this week because it was chapter 2 of Mills, which focused on ethical practice in conducting research. And so with every research class that I teach, I always make sure that we talk about the ethical aspects of conducting research because it's easy to forget about the importance of ethics when conducting research. I know that we all understand and appreciate following ethical practice and ethical best practice, but everyone needs a refresher in terms of ethics. And so, as many of you all mentioned, it's based on both the videos and the reading for the week, there have been numerous examples of the abuse of oversight on the part of researchers at the expense of participants. And ethics in research has everything to do with making every effort to minimize the potential harm, which includes being transparent and honest about the kind of research that you're conducting and what participants may experience. We also have to view research as something that we are doing with participants rather than to participants. Okay? There's a power dynamic that exists between the researcher and the participant, and we need to be keenly aware of that power dynamic. Because honestly, these participants, they give of their time, they give of their personal experiences, and they very often give of their bodies for the advancement of research. And we have to be respectful of that. Not only respectful, but appreciative, and do everything we can to minimize any harm that may be done to them. Or that could potentially happen to them as participants. They owe us nothing. If anything, we owe them a great debt of gratitude for agreeing to participate in any research that we are conducting. And so, as you all touched upon, the lack of transparency regarding the potential harm can cause a culture anchored in mistrust. And so many of you talked about the Tuskegee experiment. Many of you all talked about some other aspects of research, like what happened during the Holocaust. There was one instance, and I have to bring this up. Crystal brought up from Learning Community 3. She brought up the issue of Henrietta Lacks and the use of her cells. That was unauthorized, an unauthorized use of her cells, and they're known as the immortal cells that were used to advance medical research. And so I've placed a link in the feedback that I provided to learning communities about her story. And so you can go to the Smithsonian's website and you can read about her and her story. I actually had an opportunity to go to DC this summer and went to the portrait gallery, and there's a portrait of her in the portrait gallery, a newly created portrait by an artist, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and so her story is there and available for folks to read on the Smithsonian website. So please take some time to take a look at that and read about it. IRB, so the Institutional Review Board, that's what IRB stands for. That was established to ensure that the well-being of participants is protected and that the experiment or the research that we're conducting is not made more important than the welfare of the participant or the well-being of the participant, okay? There was a lot of discussion about the storage of data, how do you go about doing that? And so to this end, the suitable storage of data and the guarantee of the ethical handling of data collection, as well as data analysis, are all aspects of ethical research that the IRB will assess for. So when you submit your IRB application, they're looking at is there any potential harm that could become of the participant from participating in your study? They're looking at confidentiality versus anonymity. Okay, and those are two totally different things. With confidentiality, what you're saying is that you're going to take care and do your due diligence to ensure that although you may have identified information, that you're going to do everything you can to make sure that it remains confidential, and that no one will have access to it outside of those that are deemed to have access to it by IRB. And anonymity means that you have removed all identifying information. Okay, so even you as the researcher would not have the information. Okay, and so the difference would be, let's say that you're conducting a study and you're utilizing a survey. So in the survey, if you're doing a confidential, if you're going to use confidentiality versus anonymity, with confidentiality, you would have the contact information for the participants. Let's say that you wanted to maybe conduct them a little bit later to, that you wanted to contact them a little bit later to conduct a focus group interview or an individual interview. And so you wanted to do that based on the survey responses, where you wouldn't have the ability to contact them if you didn't ask them for their contact information. And so that would be a situation where what you are pledging is that you're going to make sure that the information remains confidential. So what you may end up doing is you would maybe assign a pseudonym, or you may code the participants and keep the codes separate from the actual spreadsheet that has their information, that has the key with the codes and the participants' information. So that's confidentiality. Okay. Anonymity would be that you are conducting the same study, but you do not ask for their contact information. Okay, so you're primarily using just the survey instrument for the study. Okay, and so and based off of their responses, you're going to conduct your analysis, and you wouldn't be attempting to contact them based off of the survey responses for, let's say, any other phase of data collection. So that's the main difference there. And so I know students had questions about, what are the differences? And in terms of storing your data, IRB will definitely look into this. They're going to ask you questions about where it will be stored. I just had a student email me about this the other day, over the weekend, about where he would store his information. And so normally what is suggested is that you will store the information, let's say, in a password protected file, on a server, at the university. Typically you will store it with your chair, in terms of on your chair's computer, or you will store it, let's say, in a locked file cabinet. And if you store it on a computer, again, it's going to be password protected. And so that's something that you would have to make sure could be stored for a maximum of 3 years. Okay. And so after that, then you would have to destroy the information. And in some instances, when students create the IRB and then they submit it, what they will say is that, at the conclusion of their research, that they will destroy the information that was collected, the data that was collected. So it just depends on what your data storage plans are. IRB will address what those plans will look like. Okay. So great questions about the storage of data. Okay. Okay. And so there were a few more questions that were raised across the group discussions. So one question was about whether or not pseudonyms should be used when collecting student data, let's say in a daily journal. And so I always tell students to err on the side of caution here. Okay. Let's say that you are using a journal to maybe write daily reflections about a new instructional practice that you are using in your across your classes. Or let's say that you are collecting observations, or you're writing down, various observations using an observational protocol. I highly suggest that you use pseudonyms. Okay, and it's important that you do that because as one group discussed, what if that journal comes up missing, or you put it down and someone, thumbs through it? You want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence at protecting the identity of your students, as well as other teachers. I mean, you could be writing down information about, let's say, a PLC meeting, or some, departmental meeting, or some school-wide meeting. You want to make sure that if you are in any way identifying someone that may have spoken at the meeting, or in any way something that may identify someone that you do not want identified, then I suggest that you use pseudonyms. Err on the side of caution. And you never know when you may use that journal. Later on, after you do your candidacy defense and you move to your proposal, you never know what may develop in those conversations. I have seen this happen so many times, where a student will go into candidacy and they'll come out with one plan, and then they will add to their dissertation, and then when they meet with us for their proposal defense, we have them kind of maybe change some things up, and then that journal that they thought that they didn't need, okay, now they can use that journal. And so you want to make sure that you are erring on the side of caution, and that you are at least redacting information or using pseudonyms. If you use pseudonyms, you don't have to worry about redacting. So that's one suggestion there. So the other question was with regards to informed consent, and do you use informed consent when you are conducting action research? So honestly, as most groups discuss, action research is something that we do every day, that we do daily in our classrooms. Okay? Why is that? Well, that is because you are as teachers, your primary role is that of instructor, is that of guide, is that of educator. And so anything that will fall out of your normal scope of your role, then you would need to pursue permission, okay, from your school leader, let's say your principal, or even from, let's say, even a district office potentially that oversees research, or as well as informed consent. Okay, but again, this is if you're doing something that falls outside of your normal scope of what you would do in the classroom. And for the majority of y'all, like 99% of the students who conduct action research, like, it falls within the normal scope of your work. Okay, so if you are looking to do something, let's say a formal study, a formal action research study, or if you're thinking about doing something that falls outside of the normal scope of your work, then you would need to seek both approval from the necessary individuals, or folks of authority within your school and school district, as well as informed consent, or assent. So that's something that you would have to consider, and each person's situation is going to be different. Okay, so let's say, for instance, that you want to utilize an instructional method or approach with students. And let's say you want to have a control group. So you have a group where you're gonna do this instructional method, and then you're gonna pull some students out, and you want to utilize an instructional method that you could use with everyone. Okay, but you want to use it with a specific group, and then you want to have, let's say, a control group. Okay, which everyone else would be the control. So this is the issue. The problem is that in doing so, this would create all kinds of ethical issues. The most primary of which would be that you are providing a group of students with an educational advantage over another group. Okay, and so this happens all the time, where we have students that will come to us and say, "Hey, I want to do this instructional method with, let's say, a cadre of students, 5, maybe 7 or 8 or 10 students, and then my remaining 20 students." Or what have you, in terms of the remaining students, I will teach them differently. And so with every time that comes up, we tell them, you cannot do that. That is a problem. No one will approve that. And so unless, let's say you are a literacy teacher, okay, or a literacy coach, and that is a part of what you do, that you pull students, let's say that you are doing some test prep, and part of what you would do is pool students, that's a normal aspect of what you do, then that is fine. But if it's not a normal part of what you would do, then that's something that we would tell you, no, we're not going to do that, because we want to avoid any ethical issues tied to having a special treatment group within this within your study. Okay. Okay. So, so there were some questions also about when would you not need informed consent if you're doing a formal study. Well, you would not need conformed consent if you are utilizing publicly accessible information. Okay. TEA has a slew of data sets that you can utilize to conduct a quantitative study, let's say. There is an organization called CREATE, and CREATE is housed in the College of Education, and they have a lot of, let's say, qualitative data that's stemming from or yielded from focus group interviews and individual interviews that was conducted as a part of the institute. That they will allow, doctoral students have access to conduct research, because it's just data that's sitting there that needs to be utilized that needs to be analyzed. And so in those instances, that's archival data. Okay, and with archival data, you do not need to pursue IRB. That being the case, your committee, Dr. White, Dr. Hutchinson, and myself, we will always have you submit an IRB application anyway and get the letter from IRB saying that you do not need to be reviewed. Okay, so again, err on the side of caution. You have to do the overkill piece. I know I heard some of y'all talking about the overkill and having to get IRB approval from the school district and from U of H. It's a part of the process. Okay, it is what it is. It's a part of the process. It ensures, right, you're checking the boxes that you're meeting the ethical standards for conducting the research. You've done your due diligence. You've left no stone unturned. So, it's a part of the process. Everyone does this. Everyone gets through it. And so the process may seem overwhelming, but your dissertation committee, we will help you to design a study that meets the ethical standards of research. And so you're not doing this by yourself. Okay, you're not doing this by yourself. And your committee and university and your committee and the university's review board are equally responsible for any ethics violations that students commit. This is the reason why we go through your proposal defense with a fine-tooth comb. Okay, that's the last step before you actually conduct your study and you seek IRB approval. Okay, because we are equally responsible, because we're giving you the stamp of approval to move forward with the study. And so we have to make sure that ethically that everything is above board. And so we have to comb through that. And in doing so, sometimes it can be a frustrating process, because we have you go back and clean some things up, make some changes to your research questions, just to make sure that we are good to go. And so it's a part of the process. Okay, only 2% of folks get a doctorate degree. This is the reason why. A doctorate program, the process of conducting research is not an easy task. Otherwise, everyone would have a doctorate degree. And so, so the process is rigorous, like your coursework is rigorous. The expectation in terms of ethics is high, just like the expectation in your courses is high. Again, this is the aspect, this is the experience that you have as a doctoral student, and that's the expectation. So, in terms again of going through this process, your committee is there to help you to decipher the questions that are given you by IRB. By the review board, to prepare your application in a way that you will be given the ability to conduct your study. And so another great question was, if you were to experience any ethical issues while conducting your research, what do you do? Well, the first thing that you do is you contact your dissertation chair. Okay, you contact your chair, and they will help you problem solve, okay, or address the ethical issues that may exist. They may have to contact IRB, because many students don't realize this, but when you submit your IRB application, the primary contact, one of the primary contacts is your dissertation chair. Okay, so if anything goes wrong, they are actually the point of contact for your study. Okay, and so as a doctoral student, they are the overarching researcher, and so you are being granted permission, being that they are the ones that they're the point person overseeing your research. And so you need to contact your chair. They will know what to do. They will at least know who to contact. Okay. So again, lean on your chair, lean on your committee, and they will help you problem solve any issues tied to any ethical violations that you may come across when you're conducting your research. And as someone mentioned, like the book mentions, but someone did bring up in one of the discussions that action research is something that happens real time. Okay, and so outside of utilizing archival data, let me tell you, research is something that happens real time, generally speaking, and so there are going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be issues that you experience. I have rarely seen a research project that's gone extremely smoothly. Okay, again, outside of using archival data. And so it's real. Is there, there's the human dynamic that's there. And so, it's a part of the process. And it's a part of the process. So what I ask is that y'all are flexible, okay, when you are working on your research. Okay. Let's see here. Another great question or statement that was made was considering the benefits of the research to the participant. Okay. Again, research is not something that we do to someone, but we do research with people. Okay. With people in mind and with people as a part of the process to help us conduct our studies. So one question to ask is, how is this helpful to participants? Okay. How is the work that you're doing, how is the research that you're conducting helpful to your participants? And so although the review board will not necessarily assess beneficence, okay, which is the benefit to participants, their goal is to make sure, solely really to make sure that there's no indication of harm that's going to happen to the participants, that any kind of foreseeable harm that will happen. However, in terms of beneficence, it is a question that that both funding entities, in terms of grant funding entities, and publishers of journals want addressed. They want to know, what is the so what of your study? Okay, not just the outcome, but how did you in any way add value to both the experience and to the participants? And so an example would be my own dissertation. I was working with early college high school students who later became STEM majors, so majoring in math and science, engineering, technology, and I looked at their social and cultural capital, and so basically how their social networks and their cultural knowledge helped them to persist as STEM majors once they made that transition from early college high school to the four-year institution. And so in doing so, I just didn't have them do surveys and participate in focus groups. I actually provided them with a packet of information, resources of on-campus resources that they could use. And I went through that information with them, being that my background is serving as an advisor and overseeing advising for a program. And so what I did was I put those skills to work, and then I created these packets of information that they could utilize and help them with any aspect of accessing on-campus resources. Okay, and in particular, resources focused on helping them to persist as STEM majors now that they were at the university. Okay, so those are questions that again, funding agencies and journal publications are going to ask you about. They're going to want to know the so what in terms of how have you helped your participants. And so the misrepresentation of data, this was another wonderful discussion point, and so really important, and that is this is another kind of aspect of ethical research, okay, and that is the skewing or misrepresentation of data. I don't know if you have noticed this, but in the news, there's been a lot of stories happening about the misrepresentation of data being skewed, reporting findings that did not exist. And so there's been a lot of that. As a result, there have been folks have had their doctoral degrees revoked. This is serious business. This is really serious. It's a serious offense. And so this is very much, an ethical violation. And it has the ability to cause harm to participants, because if you're putting a study out there and you're saying these are my findings, and these findings are really non-existent. I mean, you've manufactured them, okay? Or you've misrepresented data, then at the end of the day, people are making decisions thinking that they're evidence-based, but then it's not evidence-based, okay? So do you see the connection there? And so that's why it's really important that that when we talk about the ethical nature of conducting research, that we're not just talking about harming people, but we're talking about also the misrepresentation of what you're doing, okay? And so another aspect of this is plagiarism. Plagiarism is a misrepresentation of knowledge, okay? And so so ethics in research also pertains to avoiding acts of plagiarism. This is again another misrepresentation that impacts the validity of your study. And so if you're unethical in how you collected the literature for your study, then one could assume that maybe you were unethical in other aspects of how you conducted your study as well. Okay, so there's a face validity issue tied to acts of plagiarism, and that's why we come down so hard on acts of plagiarism. Again, folks have had their doctoral degrees revoked based on acts of plagiarism. So I really suggest that a thorough read of the course syllabus, because I included within the course syllabus an area that's dedicated to the explanation of what plagiarism is. So what does that look like? And then it also offers some guidance in terms of best practices as well. Okay. And then lastly is conflict of interest. And so I'm sorry I keep scratching my nose. My allergies are acting up. So that's my problem. So then lastly is would be conflict of interest. This came up as well, and so it's common for researchers to conduct, especially educational researchers, to conduct research with participants who utilize their services, i.e. students. Okay, so this is very common practice, and so there may be instances where you may see that where you may feel that maybe there's a potential conflict of interest. Okay, so in order to avoid conflicts of interest, it's important to design a study where you identify as many possible limitations or threats to internal and external validity. Okay, and so in doing so, you have to develop a plan to address each one of those threats. And so there is a link to an article that I placed within the feedback to each group, okay, that addresses, that really outlines the various threats to internal and external validity that you should consider in the development of your research, okay? When I did my dissertation, I had a whole section just on the threats to internal and external validity, and then that forced me to think through, what are the potential issues of conflict of interest? What are the potential issues in terms of any kind of ethical violation issues? And then I had to think of, okay, what am I going to put in place to ensure that I don't have this threat? Okay. And so that helped to minimize any issues of conflict of interest, or as well as any issues of ethics. And in doing so, it only increased the validity of my study. Okay. So again, make sure that you take some time and read through that article so that you can see where there may be potential internal and external issues of threats to validity. Okay. So overall, you all made some really striking connections to both your practice and the importance of ethics in research. And so you all really talked about, in terms of issues of ethics and respect, both generally and also very specifically with regards to your own individual research. And I love how, during the videos, you all took some time to ask each other, what are you working on and what are you working on? And then even if you all had questions about maybe how to move forward with something, that you would pose the question to the group. I'm having this issue about, should I, should I use informed consent here? Or so you all had these conversations. You're supporting each other in these conversations, and I know that in doing the videos each week, it can be difficult to get your schedules together and have these conversations. But what I'm noticing is that you all are building a real sense of community, okay? That you probably wouldn't have otherwise developed if you were not meeting every week, okay? And you're able to kind of troubleshoot issues that you may be experiencing in terms of conducting your individual research. Okay, so keep it up. Be flexible. This is not in terms of the effort that you all are putting forth here. This is doctoral student work. This is doctoral student effort. These are the same things I had to experience in my doctorate program, and it only makes you a better researcher and a better practitioner. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, be sure to contact me via email. Again, not this week. I won't have virtual office hours, but I will pick that back up next week. You can always email me and schedule a one-on-one meeting via Skype or Google Hangouts. Or we can again meet one-on-one. Just let me know in my office. So, all right, y'all have a great week. And I look forward to seeing y'all on Saturday. Okay. And if y'all have any questions about Saturday's meeting, just let me know. I did want to, before we go, I always wanted to give a shout out to the week's discussion leaders, because y'all do such a great job in organizing every week. Everyone does. So this week it goes out to Jason, it goes out to Jonathan and Demetria. So thank y'all so much. I really appreciate the effort, guys and ladies. All right, y'all have a great week. Bye.